Hey guys, hey, it's Michael here with Discipler, and I'm gonna record this on my computer and upload it to Facebook. It's like the old-fashioned way of sharing video on Facebook because for some weird reason, Facebook Live doesn't like my phone. So there you go. Hey, we want to take a few minutes to talk about volunteerism, promoting a culture of volunteerism in your church. As someone who has been a volunteer, who has led volunteer teams within churches and outside of churches and civic organizations, and then also led teams inside of Christian organizations and companies for many years, there's some principles that I've learned that hopefully you'll find helpful. Now, I'm going to be upfront and say I don't consider myself to be an expert on this topic. I think most of this will not be new to you. But I would say that hopefully it will all be helpful to you and an encouragement because I know right now you're in a crazy busy season. School is back in. Your focus is on ramping up for the fall. There's a lot of things going on. And probably in the top three problems you have right now is not enough people and not enough time. So just a couple of words of encouragement. I'll try to keep this brief. Three things you can do to promote a culture of volunteerism in your church. First thing, when you're asking people to volunteer in your church, make it about them, right? I know that in all the years of either teaching or ushering or washing cars or whatever it was that I was doing in the church, what I always and maybe it's just me, but I think people are people across the board. People always they want to know what is the with them, what's in it for me. And so when it comes to volunteering, don't feel like that because you're not giving somebody something tangible that you don't have anything to offer, or that you're making empty promises. Because remember that the scriptures tell us that Jesus placed a super high value on kids. So serving children is by extension serving Jesus. And I know that you know this, but it's good to remind people who are potential volunteers that the reason they're in church, the reason they're there is to become more like Christ. And because of the high priority that he placed on kids, we should match that priority level, right? So here's what I would say is that instead of saying something like, hey, we need you to serve because we're short on volunteers, or we know that you don't want to miss out on the big worship service, we really need your help. Like, those are appeals that maybe make people feel guilty, but don't motivate them to want to serve. And so I would say, change it up with reminders about Jesus' call to become more like children, because how do we become more like something? We spend time doing that thing or being around those people. And so spending more time with kids, the extension of that is going to be we may become a little bit more like kids. The second thing is remind them that Jesus said, hey, don't keep the little children from coming to me. And so the question to parents would be, hey, or to anybody thinking of serving or volunteering in kids ministry, by not serving, are you hindering children from coming to Jesus? And then the third thing would be something like, hey, listen, Jesus served kids, right? And use the story of Jairus' daughter and how Jesus went out of his way to serve her, to bring her back. And that whole story of bringing life to her, he went and he grabbed her by the hand, right? So thinking through that whole story, I think, and how you might be able to use that as a way to communicate the value of serving children and going out of your way, stepping out of your comfort zone, or doing something that wasn't planned or on your schedule to serve kids is really important. The second thing I would do is I would use testimonials. Now, you can put your volunteers up front and you can have them share the blessings of how they've enjoyed volunteering in your church, but you might be afraid, like somebody's going to go rogue on you and get up there and talk about how, little Toby bit them, or little Samantha, threw up on their shoes. And those aren't great experiences, and those are probably what many people have as a mental image when they think about serving kids, right? So in order to sort of mitigate against that, I would say Take 5 minutes with your volunteers uh, after you've praised them, after you've told them what a great job they're doing. Take out your smartphone, hold it up, and just say, "Tell me one thing that you love about serving kids." And I think you'll be amazed. It's really crazy how sometimes we think, "Yeah, I've been meaning to do that," but it'll take you 5 minutes on your phone. You can upload that to Facebook for your church's Facebook page, or maybe you can insert that video in on a Sunday morning and maybe show videos like that on a regular basis. But there's nothing like social proof. People need to see other people like them doing something that they're not doing many times before they'll do it, right? And so giving people that social proof, giving people those testimonials will be really important. And the third thing I would say is really practical tip. I'm communicating to you here on a Facebook group, a private Facebook group. And I think that there's something to this idea of online community. Facebook does a pretty good job at this with private groups, particularly because we feel like it's a safer place than our public news feed, right? It's a great place to meet people who have a shared interest or whatever. I would say consider launching a closed group on Facebook just for your volunteer team. Now, you might already do this, but I'm not suggesting that this is a place where like you put up your schedules and you give them access to the curriculum or anything like that. I'm saying make this a place for them to connect with one another, to share with each other, to pray for one another, whatever. You're going to have to take some leadership in that, and you have to be really intentional and clear about the messaging. So start by creating a goal for the Facebook group, and the goal is not to promote or to beat anybody down or anything like that, or to talk about other people. It's strictly a place to encourage one another, maybe a place to, serve one another, to share funny stories, whatever. It doesn't have to be deep, but just a good place for people to connect. Because I think if you do this and you create a private group on Facebook to give your volunteers a safe space, I think you'll start to see conversations form that'll bleed over into one-on-one relationships. And there's nothing more attractive to somebody than a vibrant community of people who love one another. And I think that when you facilitate and foster relationships between your volunteers, everybody else is going to want to be in on that too. And so it becomes a natural incentive or a motivator for people to do that. All right, I said 3 things, but I've got just a bonus thought as I've been given this some consideration. Volunteerism, it's a cultural decision that the whole church has to embrace. You have to remind people early and often, and at every level of leadership. This can't just be coming from the children's pastor. This can't just be coming from the youth minister. It can't just be coming from the guy who heads up the ushers team or lady, whoever. Serving in the church is what church is all about, right? That was Jesus' mandate to us. And I would say that we have got to not embrace the cultural norm that serving is a chore. We have to hold up the ideal that to serve is to be the first in the kingdom of Christ, not the least. And so I know you know this again. This is an encouragement. This is not meant to be any kind of a criticism. It's just simply to say, let's hold high the banner of serving children and serving others in the church, because we all know from personal experience that the rewards that are associated with that are eternal. They will not fade away. They will not rust. They will not corrode. They are stored up in heaven. And so that's my encouragement to you today. Go out there, go after it this fall, do a great job, give God the glory, and we'll keep talking to you. Thanks.